Well, Razorback fans, there has been a huge loss into the transfer portal for the Razorbacks, and I believe that it will be one of many to come.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Nabors. I am also the host of Out of Bounds. You can catch every weekday afternoon from 1 to 4 on 103.7 The Buzz and 103.7thebuzz.com. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more with right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Tuesday. As we are continuing on here during the offseason for football, getting ready for Razorback Basketball, too, as they'll be taking on Duke. We'll talk a little bit about that here in just a little bit. But for those of you who listened to the podcast yesterday or watched the podcast yesterday, I wanted to say thank you because apparently I got a lot of attention with my rants about Razorback football. And I guess I didn't realize, like, when I was doing it, like how it came across or anything. Because I'll be honest, folks, I don't watch or listen back to any of my podcasts. I cut it and I go. Now, I make sure that, or at least try to make sure that the audio is as best as it can be, stuff like that. But I don't listen to it in its entirety. So I didn't realize how it came across, but apparently a lot of you agreed with it and a lot of people appreciated it. So thank you for that. But I was pretty fired up. And, I still am. And, there's going to be some things that are going to happen this week and next week in Razorback football that we'll try to keep up to date on as much as possible. But I want to also make that clear that remember that this is a podcast. So if something happens and, you go to my podcast to listen to it and then it's not talked about, just remember that it's like I try to record these the night before it comes out or the night before the podcast officially comes out. So some stuff may not be always up to date, but I try to do my best. If anything, I try to go live if it's like huge news. So bear that in mind where if you go to try to listen, if something happens, just wait till the next podcast because it'll get talked about. But we have some pretty big news that happened yesterday. And it's not necessarily surprising, but still pretty disappointing because Razorback linebacker Christopher Pooh Paul Jr. officially entered his name into the transfer portal. He posted up on social media saying, "First and foremost, I want to thank God for blessing me with the opportunity to play the game that I love and cherish. I want to thank my coaches and teammates and for the connections and bonds that we have built over this journey of my life. I also want to thank you all for welcoming me in with open arms. These bonds will never be broken and never forgotten. I also want to thank Hog Nation for your unconditional support throughout my career here at the University of Arkansas. However, after conversations with God and my family, I have decided to enter my name into the transfer portal with 2 years of eligibility remaining. Thank you all for making this possible. Christopher Pooh Paul Jr." So he officially has entered into the portal, and it is a big loss for the Razorbacks as Chris Pooh Paul was a significant player for Arkansas. And, I hate to see it because of how good he was and how high quality of a player he was, and stepping in after some linebackers had left last year to be in a role to where he was a leader. He was very well spoken. He was well beloved. And I believe that there was just so much going for him. It was unfortunate that he had to be a part of a team that was the way it was this year. And, I just knowing and looking at it as far as, his play on the field and everything is pretty significant. So, again, unfortunate, absolutely unfortunate to lose him. I get it, though. I'm not mad about it. I'm not upset about it because I know that is the way that it has happened in college football in general. But it's still disappointing to see him leave. But I have no ill will towards him or anything like that. He actually was the second leading tackler for Arkansas this season, 74 stops, 2 sacks, and a pass breakup. And the portal doesn't open up until December 4th, so bear that in mind. But he is also somebody that is not the only one. I saw that hogsports.com reported that Sam Mbak was also the wide receiver, the former 4-star wide receiver out of Georgia, was no longer on the team. Suffered a big injury in spring ball hasn't said one way or the other whether or not he's in the transfer portal, but he is no longer with the team. And I'm going to say this too, which, I think that there's been other media members that have probably been hearing something similar, but I've been hearing that the exit interviews that Arkansas has conducted they're not going well. And what I mean by that is that you're going to more than likely see some names that enter into the portal that are just as significant, if not more so, than Christopher Pooh Paul. That's just what I'm hearing. We know that Sam Pittman and his staff are conducting those exit interviews this week, but overall, from my understanding, it's not going well. So, that being said, how do you approach this, right? Now, some of you may feel and be hearing this news and saying, oh my goodness, this is horrible, this is terrible, blow it up, jokes, terrible coaching, like all this stuff. And you know what? You may be right. But I guess I'm also going to look at it as a way of, did you want to lose these players, or did you want to lose Chris Pooh Paul? No. But does it maybe open up an opportunity to get somebody else that could be really good for you, or to be able to make up for a lot of that? Sure. It could happen. But it's just a matter of, again, goes back to the whole hope thing. Do you have hope? Do you have faith? Do you actually have belief that they're going to be able to pull this off? It's really hard to right now. But again, it's about the approach of what it all looks like right now. Like, for instance, after Arkansas went 9-4 a couple of years ago, they had some guys enter into the transfer portal that was pretty significant. Or even you can take it back to 2020. Think about when Mike Woods entered into the transfer portal. The approach to that was more of a bad look for Mike. Like, a lot of people Razorback fans were upset more so at Mike than they were at the program. Well, why is that? Well, it could have been some of the timing because it happened in spring, after spring ball and after the spring game. But a lot of it is also just because you felt good about your own situation at Arkansas. You'd be like, why wouldn't you want to be a part of this? Okay, go on. And I think even after that 9-win season, it was kind of the same thing. Anytime a player transferred out, in that case, say if it was the Greg Brooks and the Joe Fouché, those two guys that transferred out, it was like, okay, yeah, have at it. It was almost like a bad look on them more so than it was on the team and the program at Arkansas. Because why? What was the difference? You were winning. And at least you were winning and feeling good about the direction and everything. But now, if there's going to be players transferring out, it's almost the flip of the script, where suddenly you feel like it's more about the terrible program that Arkansas has and how bad it is. And, oh, please, yeah, we don't blame you for leaving. Go on, because we get it. The situation sucks right now. I wouldn't want to be in it either. We get it. Totally understand it. But again, it's just amazing how that feeling changes when even though some of these transfers may have nothing to do with that particular thing, that's the way that the fans feel. Because at the end of the day, it still always comes back to winning in the direction of your program. If you feel good about the direction of the program, you're going to tell people to go kick rocks if they don't want to be a part of it. They'll be like, okay, yeah, have fun over there. We're going to be partying it up over here, doing some good things. If you don't want to be a part of it, we don't want you. But then if you're losing, you're like, oh, yeah, go be a part of something else. Don't spend your time here. It's bad. We don't want you here. I'm not saying all fans are like that, but there are some that are. But again, it's unfortunate because it's going to have an impact on Arkansas and Arkansas fan base no matter what. So I'm going to take the approach the same way I took the approach last year and the same way I took the approach the year before. I'm going to wait until the dust settles on this transfer portal before I truly make a legitimate, logical reaction to it. Like, yeah, again, I'm not wanting to lose Chris Pooh Paul. But until I see what the roster was and then how it transitioned and what it became, it's really hard for us to really feel good or feel bad or anything. Because, like, for instance, I'm just using this as an example. I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm just using it as an example. Say if KJ Jefferson entered into the transfer portal A lot of people would be upset by it. Some maybe not, but a lot of people would be. Be like, okay, why would you do that? Well, you're going to break all of our records and then you just leave us. But what if instead of, KJ leaves, but then you get somebody out of the portal that's really good, maybe even better than KJ? Like, do you feel the same way suddenly? I mean, I would feel differently if the quarterback was in a much better position. So that's my whole point, is just let's wait to see what the whole roster looks like before each and individual player that transfers out you freak out over. Again, we'll talk about it. We'll have reactions to it. But just don't go all crazy with it and saying, well, now the thing is completely and totally irrelevant, and now it's just become a bigger joke than what it was. Because it may be, but I want to see what the roster looks like before we get to that point. But it's going to be a pretty wild next few days, folks. Buckle up. That's all I'm saying. It's going to be a pretty wild next few days. Folks, as the weather gets colder, the NFL stays hot with FanDuel. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. And so if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and so much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. We're also brought to you by LinkedIn, because when you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn just isn't some other job board. It's a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which make it the best place to hire anybody. So check it out today and post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. It's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so moving on into the next segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Razorback Basketball, that's happening. I haven't really gotten a chance to talk much about the showing that they had over there in, was it the Bahamas? But overall, it was not ideal. I mean, they went 1-2, but they were in position to win and to beat Memphis. They just couldn't do it. And the really terrible thing about it all is Tremont Mark and the scary moment that it was of him having to be stretchered off of the court for what appears to be a back issue. Don't know the extent yet of how long he's going to be out or how serious it is, but I would bet money that he's probably not going to play against Duke, just because just given the circumstances and everything, which is just a huge loss. But either way, they still have, without Tremont Mark and without Jalen Graham, they're going to be down 2 players in this game against Duke, and they got to find ways to get back on track. Well, Eric Musselman was asked about that in his press conference a little bit more, as far as how do you get back on track? How do you get things going once again? And here's what he had to say.
Coach, I kind of asked you in the aftermath on Friday, but it sounds like it might be a better question now. What's at the top of the priority list, or maybe where does it start in terms of, as a team, getting back on track where you want to be?
Well, first of all, I mean, the way that we put together the schedule, Curtis, is, I mean, obviously Duke is one of the best teams in the country. You look at this team and their center is a lottery pick. Proctor, one of their guard/wings is a lottery pick. So we're playing against 2 lottery picks. And number 1, Foster, is a early mid-20 type pick based on mock draft. So we're playing against 3 draft picks that'll all happen probably before 20. So we're playing against a really good basketball team with some guys that made a decision to come back and play college basketball after they got some guys on their team that would have been first-round picks last year. And they came back to get better. And then we got another game, and then we got Oklahoma. Like, we got Like it's as brutal a stretch as I've experienced. And but we need some better performances individually, both sides of the basketball. We're fouling way too much off the ball. We've broken down our fouls per minute. We're not creating nearly the amount of steals. Joseph Pinion has played very, very limited minutes and has similar steals to some of our guys that have played over 100 minutes more than him. So defending without foul. If we were fouling a lot and getting a lot of steals, that would make sense. But we're fouling a lot and not getting steals. Probably a recipe for being where we are. So that's one area that goes hand in hand. If you're going to be overly aggressive by fouling, then you should be getting steals. We're just fouling people 30 feet away from the ball just because we're fouling them. And, you guys can do the fouls per minute and all that, but got to do a better job defending without fouling, got to create more offense through our defense. Now, maybe the personnel is not going to work doing that, but we have to get a lot better than what we have been in those two areas for sure.
So that was Coach Eric Musselman talking about some of the things that's been plaguing his team. And I thought it was a really good point that he brings up, and this is why he's a great coach, is because, we can sit there and watch a game and be like, oh, why is the offense not doing this? Why is the team not shooting this way? Why is the team not guarding this way? We always have these questions in our own observations. But when you hear Muss kind of break it down and, approach it in a way of the fact that they are fouling so much, but without getting the steals to go along with it, where if it was just because they were an overly aggressive team that take a lot of risks and there's a lot of times where those risks pay off, it would be one thing. But when you are fouling a lot, but you're not even getting the reward from it, at least on the other side, then that becomes a very frustrating thing. Because then it's not, like he said, it's not like you're fouling because you're going for the ball. You're fouling 30 feet away from the basket, or, fouling in times where the guy who has the ball is not even around you. Like, there's just all those things that just, become a frustrating thing. And it just, it's one of those deals that where I laugh about it because I'm like, man, that's such a real thing that they have to work on and have to improve on. But, there's a lot of things about this team to like, and there's a lot of reasons why I still am fine with where it's been and how it's gone. And I think that at the end of the day, Muss is going to get it all put together. I think that's how most people say it. There's enough talent on this team to have. Again, we'll see how the Tremont Mark situation is able to come about. And we'll talk more about Arkansas and Duke tomorrow on the podcast and get through in its specifics. But I just really liked how it was all broken down there by Coach Muss. And they got to get better at it. And he understands it. He sees it. There were some other things, too, that he said of note. And talking about they got to find some more consistency out of some guys. And look forward to just developing as the season goes on and trying to make the most out of it too. I also love the fact he's like, he's basically saying, hey, we've been doing the same drills and we're doing the same practices and we're teaching the same things, but yet the results aren't coming there. So it has to be an individual thing. They got to figure out, how to do it and translate it into the game. So a lot of things to work on if you're the Razorback basketball team, that is for sure. We'll talk a little bit about the SEC and just the state it's at in football side of things here in just a second. But folks, I got to tell you about Prize Picks. And Prize Picks, of course, being the daily fantasy sports that is the largest platform in all of North America, which they are the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. So instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more or less than 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you can watch the winnings roll in. It's as simple as that. So what's great about it is that you are able to do combo projections since it's both football season and basketball season. So, for instance, if you wanted to have a LeBron James plus Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made plus receptions, you can do that only with Prize Picks. They also offer a reboot policy that your entries stay in even if one of your players gets injured. We know that happens in sports. So for football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the games in the first half and doesn't return in the second, guess what? Your player gets rebooted. So it's one of the only places that does that. So that's why you have to check it out today. PrizePicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use promo code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. It's PrizePicks.com.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.